Domestic abuse almost never starts with a punch. It starts much more quietly, with a doubt that gets planted in your own mind. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how that cycle of control begins by looking closely at one really powerful story.
And this right here, this is the key to the whole thing. When society teaches women to constantly second-guess their own intuition, it creates the perfect breeding ground for abuse to take root. It's the very first line of defense that gets taken down.
So, how exactly does this conditioning work in the real world? Well, it starts with all the excuses we're taught to make for other people's bad behavior. It's basically a form of societal gaslighting that silences victims long before things get really bad.
You hear these phrases all the time, right? Oh, he just had a bad day. You're being too sensitive. But what they're actually doing is really insidious. They shift the blame away from the person acting out and onto the person who's feeling hurt. They teach you to mistrust your own gut. Recognizing these excuses for what they are, permission slips for abuse, is how we start to challenge these norms. In this story we're diving into, there's this haunted dress that acts as this incredible metaphor for our intuition. It literally starts to bleed whenever danger is near. It's a warning sign that's impossible to ignore, unlike that little voice inside our heads that we've all been trained to silence. Okay, so let's get into the case study and see how this actually starts to build. We're going to look at the first major red flag, something that happens in a restaurant that might seem small, but is actually a total masterclass in control.
So look, this was never, ever about bad service. These are classic, calculated steps an abuser uses to test the waters. He's creating a public scene to see how you'll react, to see if you'll back down when he flexes his power. And if you're a friend and you see this, that's not just a red flag. That is a full-blown 5-alarm fire.
And that's the thing. Your discomfort, your embarrassment, your fear, it's like it doesn't even exist for him. All that matters is his own bruised ego and his need to control the situation. Any empathy for you is completely off the table. So how does it get worse? How do you go from one ugly scene in a restaurant to a full-blown pattern of violence? It's not a sudden jump. It's a slow walk down a set of stairs.
And this idea of a staircase, it is so important to understand. Abuse is rarely some big, unpredictable explosion out of nowhere. It's a slow, step-by-step process where each little compromise you make to keep the peace takes you one step further down.
And just look at how these steps go down. It starts with questioning your time, then it's your clothes, then it's your friends, slowly cutting you off from your entire support system. Every time you give in, you make yourself a little bit smaller. And that smashed mirror? That has nothing to do with the mirror. It's a dress rehearsal. He's showing you exactly what he's capable of doing to you.
And here's what makes this whole staircase so tricky, so devious. It's this tactic called love bombing. After every terrifying step down, there are flowers, grand apologies, and all these promises about your beautiful future together. It's a manipulation that makes you think the abuse is the exception, not the rule.
So what's the breaking point? When does it become impossible to ignore? It's the moment the abuse is so blatant that the inner alarm, that bleeding dress, is screaming so loud you just can't shut it off anymore. Just listen to those words. Look what you made me do. That is the abuser's playbook in its purest form. After smashing a mirror inches from her head, he makes his violence her fault. And right there, boom, the illusion is just completely shattered.
For Camila, that blood was the final, undeniable proof. It was the physical evidence she needed to finally trust her own gut over his constant stream of excuses and lies.
Okay, so you've had that moment of clarity. Now what? How do you actually get out? What comes next is literally what can save your life. And Camila's next moves are a perfect blueprint for a safety strategy.
This isn't a debate, it's not a negotiation, it's a clean break. And listen, if you're the friend in this situation, your only job is to support this. No are you sure's, no second guessing. You help them document, you offer them your couch, you listen. These steps are how someone starts to take their life back.
All right, so what happens when the abuser finally realizes they've lost control for good? Do they just give up and walk away? No way. They put on a show. And you have to watch this switch very, very closely. The second his performance of being sorry doesn't work, the tears dry up instantly. And what replaces them? Pure, violent rage. That's all the proof you need that the apology was never about love or regret. It was only ever about control.
And this is the moment of real power. When Camilla looks at him and just says a firm, calm no, she stops being a character in his drama. She's taking the pen back, and she is writing her own ending. This is how you start to reclaim your own identity, by refusing to sit in the audience for their manipulative play anymore.
And if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. Their anger is not about you. It's not your fault. It is a weapon they use for control, and it is 100% theirs to own. Understanding that is what takes away their power.
You know, a piece of paper from a judge is a tool, and an important one, but it can't by itself stop a knife. The real defense starts inside, with the decision to no longer be a victim, to no longer accept what is unacceptable. That's where empowerment begins. I really want you to let this one sink in. When he punches a wall, it is never just about him letting off steam. It is a rehearsal. It's a calculated threat. He is testing you to see just how much violence you're willing to tolerate. He is practicing his aim before he decides to change the target to your face. So this whole story is really a plea to ask yourself, what warning are you refusing to see? Trusting that little alarm bell, that first feeling that something is off, that might just be the most powerful act of self-preservation you can ever take.